two guys and a gal, talking about movies. Two guys and a gal, talking about movies. Two guys and a gal, they're talking about movies. And you know, they are really groovy. Two guys and a gal, talking about movies. Two guys and a gal, talking about movies. Two guys and a gal, they're talking about movies. And we know they are really groovy.
Well, not only are we groovy, but I want to suck your blood. Because we are doing another spooktacular Two Guys and a Gal. We are, of course, just a few days away from Halloween. And so the guys and I are going to talk about Dracula. It does not get any more spooky than that. It doesn't get any more Halloweeny than that. Did I say Halloweeny? This guy is not a weenie. This is Bella Lugosi, of course. And we are going to talk about vampires, Dracula, who, of course, his origins are there in Transylvania, and it all comes from Russia with Vlad the Impaler. Such a great character. And, of course, when Bram Stoker came around and his book, he sort of repackaged it for the modern era. And I'm scared of Dracula, and I'm scared of vampires. Let's see what the guys think. Manny Zamora and Rory. Now, Manny said he's not a vampire yet, but Rory didn't say that. So now I'm looking at you askance, Rory. Are you vampire-tastic? Are you Dracula-tastic?
Dracastic?
Or are you sarcastic? Is Dracula sarcastic?
I'm being dractastic right now.
He can be.
Does this look like a man who would be sarcastic? Maybe.
Oh,
Not
I don't
really
know.
sure. Not really sure. Okay, so Manny, what is your
yes,
journey?
by all means, open the curtain.
Open the curtain, yes, please.
Can Dracula
do
be
it.
sarcastic?
Yes, let's be
That's the question.
sarcastic. Of course, yes. Manny, what is your journey with Dracula? What were your introductions to him as a character?
Well, first of all, uh, on reflection, now I think we should have really had uh, uh, I forgot her name. The young lady from the Roland show.
Anastasia.
Anastasia, thank you. I
Yeah,
still keep wanting to call her Titania for some reason.
I thought about
Titania.
inviting her, but she was a little busy
I think
tonight.
she
Welcome,
would have been
Titania.
Anastasia. I think she would have been the perfect guest to have on the show. But you know, it is what it is. So my journey with Dracula, I think like
talking about movies.
that's right. You know, little cross promotion never hurts. But my journey with Dracula, like I think a lot of people, began with Bella and the 1931 film. I think that's probably one of the earliest ones that I remember seeing. And you know,
it
it's
was my
funny.
first experience with Dracula as well.
Yeah.
And by the way, I actually also thought of calling somebody to be a guest on this show, but it was so late. It was only like 2 days ago. So I was like, there's no way this person's going to be able to make it for this, I bet. So I just kind of backed out. But
yeah,
we know a guy who played Dracula in Dracula versus Frankenstein, 1971. He's still alive.
Yeah.
Vorkov, Zandor Vorkov, his professional name. And I should have reached out to him for this. I really should have. And I'm sorry that I didn't think of it sooner.
Yeah.
But there it is.
Yeah. Well, you know, it happens. And I was going to say the Dracula, actually, the character himself didn't really scare me as much as Renfield, Dwight Fry, because that laugh. Yes. Good Lord. That's just that scared me.
Dwight Fry is really underappreciated, I think, in the horror genre. I mean, playing Fritz in Frankenstein, who was a very integral character. Later, everybody kept calling Dr. Frankenstein's assistant Igor. No, it was Fritz.
It was Fritz, right?
And he's the one that tormented the monster and causes him to freak out and go on a rampage and everything.
Yeah.
He's in a lot of the Universal monster pictures. It's usually just really small parts, but that
Yeah.
part, Renfield, man, you talk about cutting loose and chewing up the scenery.
Exactly. They just
Again, set the bar really high for generations to come.
exactly. Literally, pretty much took him off the chain, as the kids say these days, and just let him run loose with it, and it was great. Probably one of the best Renfields ever.
There's no question in my book. He was the best Renfield.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and yeah, Universal had a lot of Edward
Creepies.
Sloan. Yeah, of course they were all contract players, but
Yes.
Edward Sloan kept showing up. As Van Helsing, and then in Frankenstein as Dr. Waldman. In Mummy, uh, I don't remember if he was in the Invisible Man, but or the Wolfman. I'm sure but he probably would have
No,
been in there at some point. So, but anyway, and Dwight Fry, as you said, and as Fritz and Renfield, and I think he was in The Mummy as well. He was the guy who went crazy at the beginning of the movie.
that was not
Uh,
Dwight Fry, but
that
he
was
was in
not. Oh,
some.
okay,
He was in Bride of Frankenstein. They brought him back. He played
that's right.
basically
That's right.
Fritz again, but they called him Carl. He was a little weirder.
Carl. Yeah.
Carl. Oh, it was a very fresh rain, or whatever he's whatever the line is.
Yeah. And
He's one of Pretorius's assistant. Also gets killed by
yeah.
the monster.
Well, if they'd learn not to keep poking the bear, keep poking the monster. But anyway, we were here to talk about Dracula.
Yes.
And so, what was your first experience with Dracula? I think you said it was Bella.
1931. It's also number one on my list. Dracula 1931. Bela Lugosi. It doesn't get any better than that. And I know you're surprised because it's a black and white film, but I have colorized it. It looks great in color.
Yeah.
And he was Dracula.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody, associated with Dracula with him for decades after that movie came out, until Christopher Lee
Absolutely.
came along and kind of made it his own.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, great cast, great Renfield. Again,
Mhm.
Dwight Fry. So happy that he actually got to cut loose and do like a role that he could stay in for the entire picture.
Mhm.
and not get killed in the first reel.
Yeah.
Actually, I shouldn't say that, because Fritz gets killed. I guess a little past halfway through the film. I mean, he's in it for a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, the mood, the atmosphere, everything about that movie was just spot on.
Mhm.
And again, they had to create horror without any blood or gore, like the slasher films of today. And
Right.
they
Yeah.
created that horror without, a lot of makeup or special effects. And you got to admire that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it was still kind of that almost silent movie type acting, where lots of expression, lots of, because I think that's, and also, of course, Lugosi had played Dracula before on stage before they hired him to it in the movies, and he'd been acting for years back in his native Hungary. I think it was Hungary, right? Where he came from.
I believe so.
Uh, and so he wasn't just some guy that had been hired to play this part. He already knew his character inside and out. And of course, it helped that the movie is based on the stage play more than the original Stoker novel.
Right.
So
We also have to give a nod to the Spanish version that came out at exactly the same
yes,
time, shot by
yeah,
a completely different director. Again, really got the creepy mood going in his own way.
hmm
The only thing that detracts from it for me is the fact that it's not Lugosi playing Dracula; it's some other guy, and
yeah,
it just doesn't seem right. But still, you got to admire the guy for doing some different things, the different angles, different the lighting and stuff, and
hmm
creating his own atmosphere with that one. And it's a very superior, or not superior, but it's a very fine film in its own right.
Yeah, yeah,
even
yeah.
though you don't,
That's
if you don't speak
exactly.
Spanish.
Yeah. It's oddly enough, and another sounds contradictory, but it's the same but different. You know, not just the sets and not, but still very atmospheric.
It's the
You know,
same set. It's just different actors,
different actors. Yeah,
and again in Spanish.
yeah, yeah.
But again, he
But the
did
director
other
made
things
different.
for. I think
Right.
I think Todd Browning in one scene, I guess they wanted to show rats or something, and there's like an armadillo running
Yeah,
through the crypt, and that's not in the Spanish one. They actually have a rat or something else that looks
yeah,
scary, that seems to fit better. So I mean, again, when you weigh them up, you've got Lugosi on one side, but you got the mood and how they did it on this side. And it's very technically, it's a
exactly.
very cool movie. So it's
Yeah,
good. It's cool to watch them both side by side because they're
yeah,
different but the
yeah,
same, like you said.
yeah. So if anyone gets a chance and gets a copy, finds a copy of the Spanish version, please watch it. Uh, yeah. So and
What was your number one?
compare contrast. My number one was it almost was the 31 Dracula, and it was for a long time. But my number one is the horror of Dracula,
Horror
the
of
first
Dracula.
the first Christopher Lee
That's my number
uh,
two.
Hammer film. And how interesting, because our number one and two are reversed. My number two is the
Yeah,
31 Lugosi Dracula.
yeah, they're both
Uh,
up there.
yeah.
They
Um,
were the ones that set the standards for
for everything
the
else, for
rest of the
everything that
vampire
came,
movies to come.
exactly, exactly. Right. Bela Lugosi set the standard for the 30s and 40s, and then and the rest of the
In
Universal,
50s.
and even into the 50s. Right.
Yeah.
The Universal films, their horror series, which technically, I guess that's really the first shared universe. Um, way before Marvel did it. So kudos to them. And of course, Hammer uh, with Horror of Dracula in '58 started the whole, in color, and we started to see fangs.
Yeah.
I think Christopher Lee is the first Dracula to actually bear fangs on screen, I believe.
No, there's a
No, it
foreign
was
film somewhere, like a Turkish film or something, where the
no.
vampire actually shows his fangs, and
Oh.
that came first. But Hammer definitely picked up on that and
Well, I
put it
guess
to good use.
Hammer is the first English speaking
Yeah, there you go.
uh,
It was only like two
film.
years before,
Yeah, so
so yeah.
yeah. Well, they knew they had to distinguish themselves from the Universal films, not just for copyright issues. I think just because they wanted to cement their own style or imprint their own style on the genre and on the story. Uh, and again, it's a bit of a deviation from the Stoker novel. Still, we still haven't gotten a a faithful version of the story, but it's still wonderful. It's very action packed. Christopher Lee plays a very dynamic, very physical Dracula, and just beautifully shot. Not a huge budget, and of course, you got to give kudos to Peter Cushing as uh, as Professor Van Helsing. Did we lose Rory? Did we lose
I'm here,
Renee? Oh,
just sitting in the green room. I don't know what
okay.
happened.
Okay. Yeah, just kind of vanished
So
there for example,
I thought you
for a
vanished,
minute.
and then you came up all by yourself, and I'm like, well, okay, I'm in the green room.
Yeah.
So
No, you
anyway, um,
anyway, I was just nattering on about
yeah, the
Christopher Lee.
shock value of the Hammer film. The first two were Horror of Dracula and Curse of Frankenstein, and the shock value of the blood. You
Mhm.
actually see the bright red blood all through the films.
Yeah.
Again, the fangs, this the gnarly makeup.
Yeah, the
Uh,
bloodshot
the
eyes.
Roy Ashton, yeah, Roy Ashton did some crazy stuff with Frankenstein and Dracula
Oh
and the
yeah,
mummies
yeah.
and the werewolf, the Curse of the Werewolf with Oliver Reed. And uh, again, it was just they wanted that shock value. They knew that's what was going to get the dollar in the late 50s. you know, and on into the 70s, you know.
Yeah.
And they were right. It worked.
It worked. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that
yeah,
was, I don't
Horror of
know,
Dracula. I don't know why it just, um, it's very tightly put together. You know, it's just
hmm
a really tight, fast paced, and again, Dracula in it is a lot more horrific
hmm
when he shows that he's full vampire, you know, than Lugosi. You know, Lugosi, yeah, you never really got the sense of the vampire, other than the fact that, you know, you see bats flying around and mist and stuff when you know he's changing around. And but I'm not sure if that was a choice. Or if it was because of the time that they were in, they really didn't have great special effects for. I mean, later they animated uh, Lon Chaney Jr. turning into a bat and Carradine turning into a
hmm
bat and back and forth. And
Right. Yeah.
uh, but again, they did that with animation. But that was the only sense of the vampire that you really got. You know,
hmm
other than it was all implied. Everything was implied in the
Right.
early films.
Right.
But
Yeah.
here it was right in your face. I mean, the fangs going into the necks and the blood squirting and the put the the stakes in the hearts and yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a
And
very tightly wound, good story.
hmm
Dracula, and
yeah.
there's only one other one that made my top five list from the Hammer films.
Mm.
A lot of them just kind of seem to be like the same kind of picture, you know. And
It got
as they
repetitive. Yeah.
progress, Christopher Lee was like, "I don't want any dialogue. Take away all my dialogue. I don't want to speak as Dracula
Right.
anymore."
Yeah.
So you didn't get a lot of dialogue from Dracula in the later films.
Yeah.
Um, but
Which made
yeah,
it,
Horror of Dracula
for
really
me,
could.
that made it a little bit more, even more sinister. You know, you have this
Mm,
presence that doesn't even speak. He's just there, and he's just this monster. Yeah, you're right. I think Christopher Lee is probably the first one to really make Dracula monstrous. You know,
yeah,
as he was in the novel. You know, I think that's
yeah.
uh, that interpretation of Dracula. You know,
Hmm.
a lot of other ones that we'll talk about make him into this kind of romantic, almost Byronic hero. You know, like, oh yeah, he's a monster, but you know, he's a romantic, and it's like,
I hate movies that make vampires pretty and lovable.
and sparkly.
No, they're vampires. They're bloodsuckers. They live
Exactly.
off the blood of human beings. They're
Exactly.
monsters. No.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
yeah, that drives me
Uh,
nuts when I see that.
yeah. Yeah. So,
Oh, but he's sad. He has a sad story. Yeah, yeah, but he's still a monster.
exactly. Uh, all right. So
That
that's our number
ex-husband
one
used
and
to
number.
backhand you. Yeah, he's probably got a sad child story too. But anyway,
Exactly. Exactly.
so
Yeah.
what's your number three?
My number three is actually a comedy, and it's Love at First Bite with
Interesting. All right,
George Hamilton
George Hamilton. Till the end of the
as
night. Shut up. I
exactly,
do love that line.
exactly, exactly.
Directed by
Oh wait,
Richard
nope,
Benjamin.
wait. Nope, take that back. That's actually my number. I'm jumping ahead here. That's actually my number four.
Uh oh.
My number three. And you know, it's funny that we were just talking about romantic vampires. My number three is actually Dracula with Frank Langella.
Okay. Yeah,
Uh,
that's my number five.
I I I enjoyed his performance. I really liked his performance as
Yes,
Dracula.
he
It was
is. He was an excellent Dracula, and again, he was sensual, but it was still very sinister.
yeah, yeah,
Yes.
exactly,
You know,
exactly.
the girls can get off on the fact that, oh, he's a handsome, beefcake Dracula, but the fact of the matter is he's still an evil bloodsucker, and the bottom line is, yeah, he's going to take this girl down to hell with him.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they're all trying to stop it, which I liked. And I like that about Bram Stoker's Dracula too. Was you still got the sense that he was evil, and again, the bottom line is if it's a love story, it's going to be it's going to be a tragic love story like Romeo and Juliet. It's not going to end well.
Right. Yeah. And besides Langella, of course, we got Donald Pleasance as Dr. Stewart rather
Dr.
than
Stewart.
Stewart.
Yeah.
And Kate Nelligan as Lucy, and
Sir Laurence Olivier
and Sir Laurence Olivier as I mean, one of the greatest, or as everyone say, one of the greatest British actors in history. Playing Van Helsing. I thought that was pretty cool. And
Van Helsing requires a really good actor. He really does.
Yeah.
So that's why we've had some of the best actors in Hollywood, well, around the world, play Van Helsing, including Peter Cushing. Peter Cushing is still probably my favorite Van Helsing.
Oh yeah.
Herbert Lom played him in a movie, which I've always loved Herbert Lom. Sir Anthony Hopkins played it for laughs, which that was one of the things that took away from Bram Stoker's Dracula for me. That and Keanu Reeves, so it made my honorable mention list, but it didn't make my top 5. I love Gary Oldman as Dracula, though. I thought he was very good. Again, you have to have a good actor to play Dracula, but you have to have an equally good actor to play Van Helsing.
Yeah, and I mean, it's based on the same play that Lugosi's Dracula, the first one, the 31, is based on. Made some changes to it, of course, to modernize it. But yeah, I thought it was very well paced. The horror elements are there. When
it's funny how history repeated itself too, because Langella played him on Broadway, or I don't know if it was on Broadway or off Broadway, but he played Dracula on stage as well, and that's how he got picked.
Well, exactly, just like Lugosi. Yeah, he had played. He did the play, and then said, "Well, yeah, let's make a movie. Let's go back and do the movie." Yeah,
great score by John Williams too, by the
way. Oh yes, well, probably one of the best ones.
That's one of the things that knocked it up into the top 5 list for me. Again, it made 5 on my list.
Terrific score. Yeah.
And number 4 on my list is also a comedy. I wanted to point that out.
Okay. All right. Cool. So that was my number 3.
And your number 4 was Love at First Bite.
Love at First Bite. Yeah. And Art Carney, or not Art Carney, Artie Johnson. Hey Ralph. Hey Dracula. Artie Johnson.
Did Art Carney play Van Helsing in that?
That would have been awesome.
Was there a Van Helsing in that? It's been a long time since I've seen that film. Totally forgot about it when I was looking up movies for this.
I don't remember.
I can't remember if there was a Van Helsing in it.
I think
it was somebody in it that was trying to save I think it was not Richard Benjamin.
It was Richard Benjamin. Yeah. And I think
because he directed it, didn't he?
He directed it, and he stars in.
But he's not Van Helsing. He's just somebody who's trying to save the girl.
Right. Yeah.
And she ends up with Dracula. She ends up with George Hamilton.
Yeah. Well, hey, it's George Hamilton.
And I think it's ironic that the guy who's best known for having a tan was playing a vampire.
Exactly. I think that's part of the. That's part of the fun. That's part of the comedy. I always feel like
since we're talking about comedies, Dracula Dead and Loving It, Mel Brooks's take on it, deserves a mention, and I forgot to put it on my list as well.
Oh, really?
And I can't remember the actor's name. He plays the little character in Ghostbusters 2, plays Renfield in that. He was very good.
No, Renfield. Renfield was Artie Johnson
in Love at First Bite.
In Love at First Bite, yeah. Oh,
you're Dracula talking about Dead and Loving It. Yeah, it was. He's from Dragon Slayer. He's so out miscast in Dragon Slayer. He was. I can't remember the actor's name now off the top of my head, but.
The little guy in Dragons, the apprentice, the.
Right, and he's in Ghostbusters 2 is he's the one who talks to Vigo. Yeah. Why am I covered in goo? And he was on TV show too.
Yeah.
Harrison Ford's wife. God, I'm having a terrible day for names today again. Anyway, yeah, we should give that a nod. Anyway, but that's not my number 4.
Let's see. Let me.
My number 4 was Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, which should be Abbott and Costello Meets Dracula, because they brought Lugosi back for Dracula. Rightfully so. The director of the movie fought to have Lugosi come back and play Dracula again, because he had been doing other vampire movies, for other studios, not being Dracula, and it was just kind of a shame. So I was so happy to see him back again, and he's very, even though he's like 63 or something like that, he looks fantastic as Dracula in that movie, and he's just very, very nasty. So you enjoy watching him do his thing again.
Yeah.
And a lot of people love Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. Even though it kind of took the monsters down a different road for Universal, it treated them with respect. Even though they did the comedy with Abbott and Costello, the monsters were still kind of scary and creepy, and it treated them with full respect, and it worked. It was huge at the box office. So much so that they ended up doing like 3 or 4 other pictures like that after, Abbott and Costello
the Mummy
and Man, Abbott and Costello meets. Yeah, the Mummy was the last one because that one was not that good. And what was the one with Boris Karloff? Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So that was a good one.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just so great to see Lugosi do another turn as Dracula. He deserved it.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think you're talking about. It looked to me like Lugosi was having fun. He was into it.
It's
At least
funny
it
to say
like
that, because he was enjoying being on the set. But they had a comedian on set. If you look up the bloopers reel for that film, and you really should.
Okay.
They had a comedian on set to keep things light. The director was a friend with Abbott and Costello, and they had a friend who was a comedian. They had him come on set and goof around. And there is a take where Bela Lugosi is coming down a large staircase as Dr. Leos or whatever he called himself in the movie, and he's dressed in like a smoking jacket kind of thing, satin jacket, and he's coming down the staircase, and this comedian is following him. Wearing a cape and a horror mask, and he screws up the take, and you can see Lugosi turn, and he is not happy that somebody is messing with his take. So there were times, they were all having a good time, and then there were times where Lugosi is a very serious actor, and he doesn't like to waste time, especially his age.
Yeah. What is all this tomfoolery? I am trying to make serious movie here. What?
I wish they could find the rest of that. I wanted to see him lay into the guy. Pull a Christian Bale on him.
Exactly.
But you can see that he's actually in the movie as a steward in the scene where they're in the cabana there at the costume party. He's a bald guy, little guy, and you can see him in all the other outtakes. He's coming into their room when should be somebody else entering the room, like Lon Chaney or somebody, and again, it's a great take of Glenn Strange cracking up as the monster, because Lou Costello's in his lap, and he can't stop laughing. He can't stop making him laugh. It's like, I'm sorry, he's in the Frankenstein makeup. So it's great. Anyway, yeah. Those films, they tried to have a good time on set.
Yeah.
Try to keep it light.
Yeah. But it's a great performance. Regardless, it's still a great performance from Lugosi as Dracula. And
yes, indeed.
Yeah, since 31. Yeah. So.
Right. Dracula 79 was my number 5. And we basically talked about that. Again, great score, great costumes and scenery, and I mean they really got kind of a Hammer kind of feel to the film, even though it was shot in America, I believe.
Yeah.
And who directed that? It was it Badham?
John Badham.
John Badham, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Which is a surprise. You know, he usually doesn't do films like that. But again, a really the only thing I didn't like about it, I liked the ending, except for the fact that he turns into a kite.
Exactly.
Flies off. Like, what the hell is that? Yeah, I love the fact that they craned him up into the sunlight. What a great way to end the movie. But just have him disintegrate and that's it. You know, don't have him fly off as a kite and have her smile. Oh yeah, he's gonna fly home and I'm gonna join him later. What the hell was that? So so that was kind of weird. But again, his performance is really good in that, and definitely the highlight of the film. I don't know why Langella gets a lot of, I don't know, bad press, I guess, for, I don't know, being a kind of, I don't think he's a method actor, but I think he's a serious actor. You know, he wants to get the thing done right, you know, and and he certainly did a wonderful job. I don't think I've ever seen I don't think I've seen a bad performance by him, although I have not seen the pirate film that he did. But anyway, I heard that was pretty bad. I haven't seen that one. But he's usually a good villain when he does villains. And and I love him in the 12 Chairs, Mel Brooks. I think that's an awesome performance. The fact that he never did another Mel Brooks movie probably tells me that Brooks didn't like working with him. But you know, there it is. Again, he deserves a spot in the top 5 Dracula list.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah.
So honorable mentions. Oh no, you got your number 5 still.
My number 5 is Bram Stoker's Dracula. Francis Ford Coppola.
All right.
Mainly for Gary Oldman.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Agreed. He is the best thing about that film.
Yes. Yeah. When we talk about Keanu and his
Keanu just doesn't belong there. I'm sorry. He does not belong. He's California. He's not British.
Exactly.
And I'm not buying it.
And I'm thinking, really, they couldn't find another young British actor to play Harker.
That's Hollywood. That's Hollywood.
That's Hollywood. Yeah.
I am guessing that. Oh my God.
I think Winona Ryder got him the gig on that movie.
Yeah, that could be. Francis Ford Coppola, I think, was forced to work with certain actors. Winona probably being one of them. But she actually did a pretty decent job.
She did a good job, yeah.
Yeah, she did a decent job in that.
Yeah.
Hopkins, I just wish they hadn't written his character for laughs. You know, he's supposed to be a serious character.
Yeah.
So, and I love picking up my phone and seeing him dance around his apartment. Just because he can, but in that, he shouldn't have been making jokes about lopping people's heads off and because they're vampires and stuff like that. Anyway.
It was it was a little it was a little.
But it is on my honorable mentions list. It's high on my honorable mentions list because Gary Oldman's good in it. Winona Ryder's good in it.
It's I also like it because at least it is one of the very few films that I've seen that actually tries to
has a werewolf sex scene.
And the werewolf sex scene, of course. Yeah, I mean, we need more werewolf sex scenes in movies these days. No,
almost as good as The Howling.
Almost. No, I was thinking that it's a little bit. It's pretty faithful to the Stoker novel. In fact, it's one of the few ones that I've seen that has all the actual male characters, all the female characters in their right positions.
It has the cowboy.
And it even has the cowboy, which I don't think you've ever seen in any of the previous Dracula movies that they bring in Quincy Morris. And I was like, I'm glad they brought him in. and it was played by the Rocketeer. So I thought that was pretty cool. It's a
I
good
always liked
cast.
him. I
Yeah,
love the Rocketeer. Rocketeer is a great
yeah,
nod to the old serials. It really is.
exactly. Yeah,
It's got
yeah.
everything. So
And yeah, I just wish
got
I don't
Nazis. It's got Timothy
got
Dalton.
Nazi Timothy Dalton.
It's got Paul
Uh,
Sorvino as a gangster.
yeah, yeah.
Anyway,
Jennifer Connelly. Uh,
mm.
uh,
They got
which
married after that film.
yeah, yeah. Uh, Bill something.
Yeah, I'm the same. Campbell, Bill
Campbell.
Campbell. Right?
Thank you, Bill Campbell. Right. Yeah,
I actually got a name right.
yeah. Me too. I keep wanting to call him Bill Pullman, but no, that's that other guy.
That's the other guy.
That's the other guy. It's the other Bill. Too many Bills.
Today, ID4.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right. So that was my number 5. All right. So, what's
Awesome.
your honorable mentions?
The first on my list of honorable mentions, it deserves a high place on the list. Believe it or not, does not have Dracula in it.
What?
Brides of Dracula.
Ah.
I love the film, and because Dracula's in the title, it fits in the category. It's probably the best Van Helsing film ever. It has Baron Meinster in it instead of Dracula, and it has some great vampire brides. Wonderful script, great action. The movie, moves along. It's like Horror of Dracula. It just moves along, and it's a great Dracula movie without Dracula.
Yeah.
Without Dracula.
Yeah.
Bram Stoker's Dracula. We skipped over my number 3. Dracula has risen from the grave. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Dracula has risen from the grave is probably
Yeah.
the second best. It's the second best Christopher Lee. He does talk as Dracula in that one. Not a lot, but he does talk.
Yeah.
And it's got a kind of a more. It has a younger cast in it, which I kind of like. I think they were trying to get to younger people, so they have like a lot of younger actors in that movie.
Yeah.
Got some great scary moments, like when they stake him, but they don't say the blessing while they're staking him, so he gets away. He pulls the stake out, he throws it at him, and he runs, and he gets away. And great ending to Dracula. He falls on a cross. It's just a really, really good Dracula movie. If you're looking for good Dracula movies to watch in an evening, yeah, that should be one of them. So Dracula, Prince of Darkness is on my honorable mention list. Louis Jourdan's Dracula, Count Dracula, 1977.
Yes, I was going to put that on my list, but it was originally a mini series for
Correct.
PBS. So I thought, well, do I include a
You can
TV
still
movie?
you can still find it as a movie. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they edited down. It's like
I think they did the same
parts.
thing with Jack Palance's Dracula in '79.
Yeah, and that was going to be on my list as well because I love
Right.
that one.
And
Love Jack Palance.
he looks like a cat more than a vampire, though. when he's hissing and he's got his fangs out. But again, he's a very menacing Dracula, so I thought we should put him on the list.
Yeah.
I mean, and I really like Richard Roxburgh as Dracula and Van Helsing. So that deserves a little nod.
Yes. Okay. Well, on my honorables list, blah blah
blah blah blah.
On my honorable mentions list, yes, on my list. Even though it's not just like Brides of Dracula, it's sort of Dracula adjacent, and that is, of course, Nosferatu. The original 1922 movie.
I was gonna put that on my list, but he's not Dracula.
Not Dracula.
He's Count Orlok.
He's got Count Orlok.
Yeah,
but he's based on
Dracula. So again, I almost put that on my list. It deserves a nod because it is based on Dracula.
Yeah, it was an unauthorized.
They just couldn't call it Dracula for copyright.
For copyright reasons. Yeah, it was still copyrighted at the time. Now
and the original
public domain. Yeah, the original one.
The original. Not the Klaus Kinski version 79.
Not the Klaus Kinski. I don't know about the new one. There's a new remake coming out, so I don't know about that one. But yeah, the original 1922 silent
I'm
film.
not liking what I'm seeing for the new Nosferatu. Okay, looks like Pennywise still. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
He just doesn't look menacing enough to me. He looks too baby faced as Dracula.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be another Klaus Kinski Dracula. Nosferatu.
Probably.
Cross. I hated that.
Oh, well, you know.
Weak.
Dracula is strong. He's virile man.
Any other honorable mentions?
My other one, so Count Dracula with Christopher Lee again, but this is the Jesse Franco version.
Herbert Lom's Van Helsing. We talked about that.
With Herbert Lom, and I think Klaus Kinski is also in that one as Renfield,
right.
I believe, if I remember correctly.
You're right. It's been a while since I've seen it.
Yeah,
I always have a hard time with Dracula having a handlebar mustache. And I know that that's a nod to Vlad the Impaler. He had a mustache.
Well, it's not to that, but it's also but it's also that's how Dracula is described in the book, and that's one of the things that Christopher Lee insisted on was I want Dracula to be more as like what Stoker described. And that's
good for him.
Yeah. So that was one of his conditions to do the movie because he just felt like, I mean, he liked doing the Hammer films, but it's like, but it's still not Dracula. It's still not the Dracula from the Stoker novels. But anyway.
Right. And he's done Dracula more times than any other actor. He's done like 7 or 8 times, including the one that he did with his son in Spain. It was a Son of Dracula kind of spoof.
Yeah.
Where Dracula's son is kind of a wimpy kind of.
Yeah.
And he
plays Dracula and Son. Yeah. Dracula and Son. Yeah.
Dracula and Son. That's it. Yeah. But I think it's Spanish, isn't it?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yes.
So he did like 5 or 6 for Hammer, and then he did the, like you said, Count Dracula, and he did that one. So I think he's done like 7 or 8 times.
Yeah. So, he definitely holds a record. Okay, so one of my other honorable mentions is a movie called Dracula Untold, which is kind of a prequel to the Stoker story. Luke Evans plays Dracula in that one, and it kind of purports to be the story of Vlad and how he becomes Dracula.
Right.
There's another older vampire. It's very kind of more of an Anne Rice version of the story. So, but not bad. Pretty good. Definitely a bit more of an action movie than a horror movie, but still pretty high up on the creep factor.
A lot of like battles,
battles. Because it shows him. They always talk about him being this great general and leading his troops, and you saw a little bit of that in Bram Stoker's Dracula, but this one really kind of leans into that.
Yeah, he was a sheriff, right, where he had to keep the peace basically in the area, and the invading Turks and stuff like that, right?
Right, exactly.
So and they create all kinds of weird, creepy stories about him because he would make examples of some people by cutting their heads off and putting them on stakes and stuff like it, putting their bodies on stakes and stuff like that.
Right, exactly, and that's where a lot of that came from.
Came from.
Exactly. Stoker kind of took those stories and went, "Oh, this sounds cool." You mentioned Van Helsing with Richard Roxburgh as Dracula. When I first saw the movie, I felt like I didn't like his performance. I thought it was way too over the top. I thought it was a little too screamy, a little too exaggerated. But seeing
the problem with the film is just too much CGI.
Well, yeah,
that's the problem with the film. Is just they could have relaxed the CGI a little bit and still gotten a lot of creepy stuff done.
a few more practical effects.
A lot of times his face will turn into the vampire full fangs out face thing kind of thing. And it's like, why did you have to do that?
Yeah,
You know, he's doing a great job just acting. Just let him act.
Yeah. But, you know, over the years, I've grown to appreciate his performance. I can see what he was going for, you know. So there's that one. Recently I saw a movie called The Last Voyage of the Demeter or Demeter. I'm not too sure how to pronounce that, which is, and you see it almost in almost all the films, but they took that part of the book of the actual ship voyage from Carpathia or whatever, from Transylvania to England, and showed, you know, kind of expanded on what happened on the ship with him and you know, with Dracula, you know, basically killing everybody on the ship. So I can see why it didn't, it kind of bombed at the box office, because it's like, we've seen it. We've seen it. And almost every Dracula movie has that part. I mean, some shortened, some a little bit more, but this one kind of just took it and expanded it out. Not a bad movie, kind of creepy. Has a few scares. The Dracula in the movie is very much patterned after the Nosferatu vampire, bald. And, you know, you kind of see it on the poster. Yeah, the little toothy fangs. But it's not a terrible movie, but I can see why it kind of bombed.
The funniest take on that, and there was the only funny scene in the new Munsters movie by Rob Zombie is when she goes on the date with the Nosferatu guy, who's actually the same actor that's playing the mad scientist in that same movie. But anyway, but Pietro in What We Do in the Shadows, the original movie, was hysterical. I mean, I just died every time he was in a scene, and the fact that, you know, he died.
Yeah,
the way he did, that was really funny. But he's the funnest Nosferatu character. And of course,
I haven't seen that.
Reggie Reggie Nelder playing the Nosferatu in the original Salem's Lot.
Oh,
very scary, very creepy.
Yeah. Well, we're going to do sometime probably next year, maybe not necessarily for Halloween, but we do need to do a just vampire.
Yeah,
we'll talk about our favorite vampire movies that's not Dracula.
Yeah.
And that'll certainly be, I think, one of them. So that'll be in the future.
I have a few dishonorable mentions.
Well, one more honorable mention, and it's probably one of the newest ones, and it's Renfield, which I think General Howitzer is going to talk about on his show in a few weeks. So I might hold off on not talking about it in more detail, and we'll watch that. But fun movie, and you know, any movie
Nicolas
with
Cage is Dracula.
Cage,
that was a stretch.
I thought clearly he was doing Lugosi. He was playing Lugosi, because I think that's what the movie was basically kind of
Lugosi on the edge.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So but a fun movie nonetheless. A fun movie if you haven't seen it.
It was interesting.
Yeah. Dishonorable mentions.
Billy the Kid versus Dracula, with John Carradine returning to play Dracula again.
Yeah.
One of those films it's so bad it's fun, you know, so it deserves a mention. Dracula versus Frankenstein, which I mentioned earlier, was 1971, where you know, they actually used the plastic fangs that you get for 50 cents in the store. Even today, I think they're only 50 cents.
I think so, yeah.
And Zandor Vorkov is one of the few actors that play Dracula is still alive from that time period. Udo Kier, I think, is still alive. He played Dracula in the Andy Warhol Dracula, which deserves a dishonorable mention, I think, as well. Origins. I need to find Origins. And Dracula 2000, which went off the rails so far you're just like, what?
Yeah, that's the one with Gerard Butler, right?
Yeah.
And it was a Wes Craven movie, and that's what's so disappointing. I don't know if he directed it, but I think
he just produced it. Yeah.
Yeah, but still, that was
It
pretty
had
bad.
Christopher Plummer as Van Helsing.
Yeah,
Who called him Dracula. Dracula. That's what he called him, Dracula.
Yeah.
And they had the whole vampire leeches thing to keep you alive. What?
Yeah. I mean, I get it. They were trying to modernize.
What?
I get they were trying to modernize the whole story.
And they made like 2 sequels to that with Jason Scott Lee. I think he was like a Hawaiian preacher.
Yeah.
The other 2 films, like, what? They actually made more of these?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Dracula 3000, which I think it was like Dracula in space.
I want to see how he comes back in that one.
Yeah. Well, exactly. After that first one, I was like, yeah, no. So
and somebody posted a thing in Facebook in the Universal Monsters room. Something was really interesting. They were talking about Dracula being part of House of Frankenstein, House of Dracula, those monster mashups. Why didn't they put the Mummy in those? Which I thought was, that would have been a great idea. But how are you going to put those in there? How are you going to get the Mummy involved in those films? And George Zucco plays Lampini in the House of Frankenstein. The guy that has the he's got the bones of Dracula in a casket in his show, in his like sideshow freak show thing. And they said, well, why didn't Lampini just have the Mummy in there as well, and find a way to bring the Mummy back and use him to kill people for your revengeful causes? And like, I guess you could have done that. So anyway, I just thought that was kind of weird that they brought that up and they said, yeah, we could have done it this way. I'm like, wow, that was really kind of easy, wasn't it? And unfortunately, Lugosi was not available for House of Frankenstein. So they had to cast somebody else as Dracula. And then when they came up with House of Dracula, they decided to just go with Carradine again for House of Dracula. And it wasn't until Abbott and Costello they brought Lugosi back, and with a flourish.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. Well, there you go. So that's our take on Dracula. Dracula.
Sounds like a drink.
I know.
So tomorrow, I think Roland Pruitt's Kaiju Review. They're going to do Mothra. This Thursday, Halloween, 7:00 at The Exorcist.
Ooh.
So that should be interesting. And that's
the power of Christ compels you.
Spooky week.
Yeah.
Halloween week.
All right. Well, next week on this show, we'll be talking about the films of director David Lynch and his very odd oeuvre of films. And we have a special guest, Ilana Lang, who is a friend of Cosmos. And in fact, she's the one who requested David Lynch. So we always accommodate our guests. So she'll be on. And then week after next for Veterans Day, we'll have our favorite war movies. And after that, we'll see what happens. No, I do have the rest of the month planned out. So, I guess I'll
David Lynch movies and war movies though for until then.
Yes, we'll do that.
And you should too.
Exactly. So until then, Ms. Renee, are you there?
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, everyone should be hanging around. Kerry Harrison is going to be doing his Democratic Candidates from Florida forum, and that will commence in about 15 minutes, everybody.
Is Rick Scott going to be there?
No, he will not be there. No.
Oh, man.
You think about somebody who's like a vampire creepy.
Exactly. Yeah. So, all right. Well, thank you very much for watching the show, and we will see you next week. Thanks for watching this episode of Two Guys and Sometimes a Gal Talking About Movies. Be sure to like, subscribe, and click that notification bell to get future episodes.